So good evening or good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Francesco Billari. I'm professor of demography and dean of the faculty at Bocconi, and of course I'm affiliated with SDA Bocconi School of Management. And it's a great pleasure and honor to be here to coordinate this SDA Bocconi Insight live. Today's topic has been inspired by the role of the digital revolution, and we are quoting Muhammad Yunus. So when he was receiving the joint prize with Grameen Bank, basically his bank in Oslo, he said, basically, telephone ladies quickly learned and innovated the rope of the telephone business. And this has become the quickest way to get out of poverty and to earn social respectability. So is it really true that mobile phones, that the internet gets you out of poverty, that gets you social respectability? These are the questions we'll try to ask today, also looking at the implication for business, and we have a business leader to help us in understanding. So our two distinguished guests, I'll talk a bit about them, but I'll give the floor to them later. So Ridi Kashyap, hi Ridi, is Associate Professor of Social Demography at University of Oxford, where she's affiliated with Nuffield College. Ridi is originally from India. She grew up in India. She's a cricket player. And she studies the interactions between social inequalities and demographic processes, as well as the impact of the digital revolution on our lives. Welcome, Ridi.
Thanks, Rick.
Jeffrey Hedberg.
Buonasera.
Jeffrey is the CEO of Wintre. He was born in Pennsylvania. He's from Eastern University. And before taking up the Wintre Challenge, he has led the digital revolution in many parts of the world, and at least 3 continents in my excursion. So Jeffrey has worked for Swisscom, Deutsche Telekom, T-Mobile in the USA, Telecom in South Africa, Mobilink in Pakistan. Welcome, Jeffrey. I hope you can hear me well.
We can, thank you.
And so participants will be able to ask questions through the chat, and we'll take questions after the first round. So before giving the floor to our speakers, let me try to introduce the topic, talking about what is the evidence. Do we have evidence about Yunus' suggestion, Yunus' conjecture? Is the digital revolution boosting development in a sustainable way, in a gender fair way? I start by bluntly saying yes. We have enough evidence that the digital revolution is boosting sustainable development goals and women's empowerment. Let me cite 3 pieces of evidence. The first piece of evidence is a paper that Ridi, myself, and colleagues have co-authored and will appear next week on the proceeding of the National Academy of Sciences in the United States. So in that paper, we study that mobile phone access is associated with lower gender inequality, higher contraceptive uptake, and lower maternal and child mortality. So mobile phones actually save lives. Women who own a mobile phone are better informed about sexual and reproductive health services and are more empowered to make independent decisions. When we study Malawi and the poorest areas of Malawi, we could show that women who own a mobile phone desire to have a smaller family. Their big families are a challenge, and actually have fewer kids. So mobile phones get them access to information, but also the view on the life of others. Even if we move to the rich part of the world, where, for instance, Jeffrey started his career in this business, rich Germany. So we have a paper showing that the internet brings children. So the internet brings children because where broadband arrives, educated women are more able to combine work and family. They report more working from home and overall life satisfaction, but they also have more kids. Still, there is no advantage of having the internet for the lower educated. So the challenge is digital divides are there. And the first divide is about having access. But the second divide is being able to use the internet in a way to improve their lives. Let me ask Ridi. Ridi, could you tell us more about the gender digital divide?
Thank you, Francesco, for the kind introduction, and I'm very excited to be here at this event with both of you. So our paper that Francesco mentioned, as well as an accumulating body of evidence from different contexts, shows that mobile phones, especially when they're in the hands of women, have a significant impact on sustainable development outcomes linked to outcomes such as health, well-being, and empowerment. These impacts are also larger and more meaningful, we find, in contexts, in low and middle income country contexts, where women are more likely to face greater barriers to accessing information through other channels, barriers to accessing economic and financial resources, barriers to communicating and connecting with others, including trusted others and healthcare providers, and also just learning about a wider world of opportunities, ideas, and possibilities. So we see tremendous potential in technology in being able to bolster outcomes that are relevant for human social development. So placing mobile phones in the hands of women is thus very important, our research shows, as well as there are reasons to believe that women are empowered when they own technologies because they're able to overcome barriers that they face otherwise. And this potential is even explicitly recognized now in the context of the UN's Sustainable Development Goals, especially SDG 5, which is explicitly on gender equality, which recognizes the importance of harnessing technology to promote the well-being of women. Despite all this potential that both research as well as international development policymakers are now beginning to realize, my work has shown that there are significant gender inequalities in mobile phone access and also internet access, especially in parts of the world where these payoffs to mobile phone ownership and internet connectivity, especially for women, are likely to be larger. So, for example, in my work, I found that in the countries of South Asia, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and in sub-Saharan Africa, especially in West Africa, women are much less likely to own a mobile phone and have internet access compared with men. And even though these technologies have become cheaper, that's been the case, that these gender digital divides persist. So to give you an example, in India, the gender gap in mobile ownership is nearly 25%. So this suggests that women are 25% less likely to own a mobile phone compared with men. And in these contexts where there is this gender digital divide, it's quite layered, by which I mean that even when women do have access to mobile phones, it's likely to be shared devices, which in some sense curtails their ability to leverage these technologies in fuller and richer ways. From a business standpoint, I think this is important because it illustrates that there's, in a sense, an untapped market, women who don't have connectivity, who are excluded from the digital revolution. But from a social and human development perspective, this is a tremendous missed opportunity for accelerating progress on sustainable development and human development goals. So these digital gender divides, I think, are very important for us to track and also to close. And in some of the work that I've been doing, which you can see on our project website, digitalgendergaps.org, we are trying to provide timely indicators on these digital gender inequalities across the world. So mapping them concretely, urging businesses and those in the world of policy to recognize them and work towards closing them. On the website, we're also illustrating the potential of how businesses and private companies have important data sets, which are often proprietary for the moment, whose value needs to be really unlocked in measuring and tracking in real time this important dimension of gender inequality that is digital gender inequality.
Thank you, Ridi. We mentioned business, and let's get to Jeffrey. So you worked in kind of leading companies in various parts of the world. My questions for you are, I mean, what have you done, or what have you experienced in your trajectory with respect to the topic we are discussing? And maybe the other bit is, why should participants to this meeting care? I mean, why should the future leaders or the current leaders of the business world care about this?
Yes, similarly, I'd like to thank you for being part of this discussion, this, I think, quite a defining topic. I've had the opportunity to live and work across 4 continents, ranging from Italy to Pakistan, to Switzerland, to South Africa, to Nigeria, to the UK, and I can go on. I'm a bit of an adventurer. My wife would say too much of an adventurer. But clearly, when you are operating across these diverse environments, you have an ability to compare, an ability to contrast, an ability to understand what good looks like, and particularly what developing country really means on the ground. And I'm a big believer that whether you're in healthcare or education or industry, whether you're a policymaker, whether you're a worker in a small business, with leadership comes responsibility and accountability. And I think whether you're a leader in any different context, it's important that you, with the role that you're playing, are able to leverage that leadership responsibility and accountability. Now, across these different markets, I've been fortunate to have been involved in the mobile or telecommunications space. Mobile telecommunications, as we heard earlier, is a very important way to access information. It's an important enabler, empowerer of your customers, of your people, and clearly in the country in which you are operating. So I think the leadership and the responsibility that I've assumed across my different adventures has been helped by the fact that I've been part of an industry that is an enabler and an empowerer for the different segments of that particular society. I think one of the important things that I've learned is awareness, and not for the customers and the people, but for the leader. I think you need to, when you move into different contexts, you need to listen, you need to learn. I very much like to go on the ground and speak with the customers and speak with the people, because when you're in a different environment, you need to understand what's happening on the ground in order to be able to define the right objectives, the right deliverables, and what needs to be done in order to be able to, again, empower and enable across that particular segment. I think one of the things that has been very interesting for me, and I think it's been very well documented in the research that you've done and you've shared with me in our earlier discussion, is again, not only the importance of mobile, and let's remember, in the developing countries, there really is a very limited fixed broadband infrastructure. So really it is about mobile infrastructure that will provide the ability to enable and empower. And I think the research shows, as you've suggested, that it really does provide, through this access to information, more material on health and education and lifestyle and a number of different things that basically, again, enables through that access and empowers the people to be able to take good decisions, whether it's with respect to agriculture or family planning, whatever it might be. So what I thought I'd do is really give you, because I'm a business guy, I'm a practical guy, give you two examples in developing market context where we did things. And I'm going to focus, particularly given our topic, on empowering women and what we've done in two markets. And I'll start with South Africa. South Africa has a population of about 50 million people. About 50% are below the poverty line. You have 52% of the population being women. And if it's a household led by a woman only, that goes up to 78%. And so it's very important, and we saw this through our initiative, obviously, to be a good corporate citizen. With leadership comes responsibility, but also it's a business opportunity, as was noted earlier, in order to be able to provide access again in the context of South Africa to health around contraception, HIV, diet, family planning, different education opportunities around literacy and what needs to be done, particularly in the rural areas where these literacy rates are very high. What needed to be done in terms of looking at financial inclusion. And so we looked at what we could do as a mobile operator through building the network. And in South Africa, there were community service telephones where everyone would come in the village to call, and we would connect that village or that community service telephone within the village. There would be a number of them. And so the first thing was really, given the dynamic and the demographics, what could we do in order to provide that access? But it's not just about access. I mean, it can be spectrum and network. How do you empower these women to feel confident to be able to go and make themselves aware of the different opportunities that there may be for growing? And so a lot of the program, a very interesting one, a lot of the work that we did in addition to the access was around empowering. We had a program called Take a Girl Child to Work, which was between girls largely from the underprivileged areas. And they would come, it was a mentoring program. And one day they would come to a political environment, to a hospital, to our company. It was the CELC Take a Girl Child to Work Day. And we would expose them, make them aware. They would come around with us through the day, ask questions, see what we're doing, in order really to give them a sense of what is out there. So when they go back to the access opportunity, they had a dream, or they had a vision, or they had something that they could touch that they weren't necessarily able to see tangibly in their village and the situation that they were in. We started with about, in 2003, with about, so it wasn't just CELC, it was a number of companies, about 85, and it's gone up now to over 700 companies that participate in this. And again, through the years, we've had over 1 million girl children that have come through this program. And some of them have become professors and lawyers and doctors. And some of them have stayed at home, but they've been made aware. And as obviously mobile telecommunication has improved, the access to them has improved, literacy has improved, and their ability to get relevant information on health, on education, on other matters has moved in a good way. And so that was good for us because we were, to the point earlier, addressing an untapped market, but it also was good in the spirit of with leadership comes responsibility to give these young girls an awareness and also an ability to be able to take advantage of the information that was out there. The second program tactically that we put in place and tangibly was in Pakistan. In Pakistan, just a couple of numbers. You have a population of 180 million. Interestingly, in South Africa, 52% of the population women. In Pakistan, it is 48. But still, you have a large, about 30% under the poverty line. And particularly in the rural areas, where that number is a bit higher, you have an illiteracy rate, which is about 75%. And so one of the things that was important for us at the start was to put into place an SMS Literacy Program, where they'd be able to get information in Urdu, of course, on writing, maths, that they would start to develop through their mobile phone some capability that they weren't simply seeing in through the educational system that they had in their area. That was a very good program, and we got an award at the GSMA with that as part of women's literacy through SMS. But obviously that was in the early days. We then evolved that. And another program that we put in place was around financial inclusion. And it was with respect to, the company was Mobilink, but the brand was Jazz. And we put something in place, particularly given the fact that a lot of these women were at home because there was such a poverty rate, particularly in the rural areas. The husbands would either work elsewhere within Pakistan or even abroad. And so to get money back to the women working in these villages where they were with their children, etc., it was very hard because there wasn't a normal structure to get the money back, other than maybe uncle or aunt who would then come, because there wasn't really any physical infrastructure. And so what we did is we introduced an easy way for them to put in a code on their mobile phone. They needed obviously to have their SIM verified biometrically. They would need to have a mobile phone as well. And we had a very easy way for them through USSD to be able to access Jazz Cash. We gave a bit of money for them to get started. We gave actually quite a nice interest rate. And it really grew the financial inclusion because we were able to work with the government, that the government disbursements that would come in to those areas, subsidies, if you will, would be then delivered through the Jazz Cash platform on the mobile phone. At the same time, we were growing an agency of about 65,000 agents, because of course the money could come in, but you needed to go and be able to exchange it for cash. So you needed to be able to have access to the infrastructure to do that. So we created employment at the same time, because a lot of the agents were not just men, but women that would go out. And in the rural area, you start to put the system in place where money is coming in, either from the loved ones who are working away, the husbands or the fathers, as well as the government disbursements, as well as some money that we were contributing to get it started. And in 2017, we had about 3 million, and it doubled in 2018. And again, we were able to win a GSMA award through that. So I think it's about, once you get the system started and the capabilities in a very simple way, it's important to be simple, you start to see some of the benefits of money flowing in, people feeling more, particularly women feeling more empowered, access to information, but also financial inclusion, because in many ways they were just sitting at home and waiting and looking after the children. And that was not only a market opportunity for us, but was a way for us to contribute. Again, with leadership comes responsibility to be able to start to build an opportunity to be able to bridge the digital divide and to grow the awareness, the access, but also the confidence in using these technologies.
Thanks, Jeffrey. Thanks, Ridi. Also, let me invite participants to pose questions, and I think you can do it through your chat. I currently cannot see any questions, so I'm gonna start myself posing another question to Ridi. So is it really that easy? You just give mobile phones in the hands of women, and then you don't need to give education and money, and women are suddenly empowered. I mean, of course, that's not that easy. But what is the relative importance of digital technologies compared to money, education, and so on?
Right. I think that's a really important point to think about in general, which is that, you know, we cannot, while digital technologies are really important, and I think they both act as enablers of new forms of information, of access to better communication and connectivity, and give exposure to the life of others. There are two issues here. First, they're not substitutes, but better thought of as complements to other forms of wider economic and social developmental processes that involves, you know, investing also in schools, investing also in literacy, investing also in just sort of, you know, provision of better infrastructure for healthcare, and so on. So, you know, this is not a panacea in a vacuum. We need to ensure that, you know, these are all complementary processes that reinforce each other. Nevertheless, I think, you know, talking about literacy and education and investment in these things, I mean, an important part of, if we think about the right to education and you know, a right to literacy, I think in a world with digital technology, that right to literacy has to include digital literacy. I think fluency with digital technologies is an important bedrock of accessing and being an empowered citizen. So I think, especially in a world where these technologies are available, it's a crucial ingredient. Both sort of, you know, digital skills, basic minimum digital skills, are a crucial ingredient of any educational program. But I would argue that digital skills isn't simply just about, you know, accessing and knowing how to operate, copy and paste things, or you know, open apps, or make phone calls. It's also about how to trust and manage information that you access through digital technologies, right? So this is also about ensuring that we are well informed and we know, for example, that when we're accessing information, when it's trustworthy and not. And some places, for example, in the state of Kerala, learning how to screen for good and bad information that is transmitted through mobile phones is now something that has been actively integrated into school curricula. And this is, I think, a sort of good template moving forward, that we think not just purely in terms of access, but also think in a holistic way about digital literacy as an important ingredient to be an empowered citizen. And we also think about how digital technologies can be integrated within broader social and developmental processes and work hand in hand in sort of fostering social development goals.
Or how do we make this work? It's crucial then to develop the word, to have everyone access to mobile phones, everyone access to internet, and being able, having the capability of using them well. Is it your responsibility as the leader of ICT company?
I think we're certainly partly responsible. You know, I'm a big believer that particularly in times of change and transformation, and whether it's technology, COVID, it's important that we have a strong alignment between multiple parties. I like to call it public-private partnership, because if it's just industry acting, there are things that we can do, but we need to have a return on capital employed. So we will make decisions not on the basis of philanthropy, but we'll make decisions ultimately on a balance between good business, good ethics, and also contributing through the sustainability of the business and the country that we're operating within. But I do believe that alone is simply insufficient. So there needs to be obviously work, given what Riti was saying about skills. We put a lot of focus on skills in our company now. How do we develop the right skills? That we can't do just on our own. We need partnerships with Bocconi and others, technical skills, etc. So I think it's, but that's also not enough. If it's industry working with education, how do we make sure that we have the right policies in place that will be aligned with industry, that will be aligned with the skill requirements as this transformation evolves? And so I think it's very important that we have a public-private partnership, because if it's just the government, or it's just the industry, or it's just the education, in these complex times that are changing so rapidly, it will not be enough. And whether from a policy perspective, from a social or society perspective, or from a business perspective, we need to be able to roll out these networks because it's so important. We've seen it really through COVID-19, through smart working, through e-learning, where our traffic has exploded over the last few weeks. Fixed data 70%, mobile voice 40%, mobile data close to 40%. This is an enabler and an empower. And if it's just industry, it won't be enough. If it's just the skills that you're teaching at Bocconi, won't be enough. If it's just the policymakers talking about the importance of enabling the communities and bridging the digital divide, it's not going to be enough. Collectively, there is a responsibility that we all share as leaders. And it's something we're pushing. We're doing a lot of work with Bocconi on the skills side of things, and other universities with Polytechnico on the engineering side. But if we just do it alone, it simply won't be enough, and it certainly won't be sustainable.
I'll go back again. I'll take an opportunity on what Jeffrey said. In Pakistan, if I'm not mistaken, you said there were more men than women.
Yeah.
And I know this is an interest and a big topic of research for Riti. She's been contributing to the debate on missing women. So the extreme form of gender kind of disempowerment is sex-selective mortality or sex-selective abortion. And we know that in some countries, basically, technology has been used to allow to selectively kind of not allow women to be born, if not to kill them later, which was what was happening before, or to let them die. So, in that sense, are we also having less missing women in situations in which digital communication technologies become widespread, and how does it happen? Or I don't know if you have the answer, but I was wondering whether this is the case.
I would hesitate to provide any speculation on such an important matter. What I can say is that the women in Pakistan were some of the most enterprising, capable, and inspiring colleagues that I had. So I would really want it to be more balanced for the future. Riti?
Thanks for reading. You have evidence.
So yes, so I think Francesco, what you just mentioned actually sort of touches it touches a couple of interesting issues. I mean, the first of which is that, you mentioned that sort of technology is used in a sense to empower. We've been talking a lot about how technology can empower, but in a sense, technology can also disempower or it can empower the wrong intentions, right? Or the intentions that we would not want to be empowered. So in this case, when we're talking about practices such as female selective abortion, the rapid diffusion of ultrasound technology really led to essentially ultrasound becoming widely available, resulted in people implementing their preferences, their gender discriminatory preferences in behaviors such as female selective abortion, which resulted in the kinds of gender imbalance in the population that Jeffrey identified when he said that Pakistan has 48% women compared with South Africa, where the opposite is the case. So in a sense, technology here can be both exciting and provide new avenues, but it can also allow for old beliefs and old preferences to manifest themselves in new ways. So that's one thing that we always have to be wary of and sort of think when we're thinking about also issues such as digital literacy. And that's why I was making the point that, new information can be exciting, but new information can also spread virally when it's coming from your networks on WhatsApp, and you don't know how to understand and adjudicate between good and bad information, right? So it's really important that in our approaches to digital literacy, we think about when and how technology can sort of meaningfully empower groups and communities in a way that has a positive impact on society. I think the second issue there is, I do think that, can technology in the long run, even though in the short term it can empower or it can result in old behaviors and old norms manifesting themselves in new ways that might make us uncomfortable, in the long run, I still believe that mobile phone technologies and also internet access has the potential and I think there's evidence to suggest this as well, is shifting gender norms and aspirations for women in the way that Jeffrey was also referencing in his work in South Asia and in South Africa. I think, in the long run, we know as social scientists, right, that norms are really sticky. They don't change overnight. But at the same time, it is through disruptions such as the digital revolution, discontinuities that themselves unravel new forces and new developmental processes, that these long-standing norms are challenged. Because women get access to new ideas and opportunities, they see how things occur elsewhere. Because they're able to access, banking and mobile money, they have financial inclusions, they have the ability to actually make financial decisions that have real, tangible, material impacts on their lives. They have the ability to contact trusted others and access networks that they might not have access to because they married and moved away. I think there is a real opportunity here in the long run for these technologies to also weaken gender norms that then manifest themselves in the kinds of behaviors and in phenomena such as missing girls and missing women.
Thanks, Sridhi. So that's really the big questions of our time. But going back to Jeffrey, so we've talked a lot about the, let's say, poor parts of the world. You hinted a bit on what is going on these days with wind trade business in Italy because of the COVID. I mentioned our study on Germany where broadband was allowing educated women to combine work and family in particular. But there was then a different kind of digital divide. So for Germany, basically the possibility to work remotely is kind of socially divided, and so the advantages were not taken up by the lower educated women. So what can we do for Italians? I know not many of the participants will be Italians, but I'm sure this is a big constituency, and also myself, I'm interested in that. So this is not only for Pakistan, South Africa, or India. So what do we have to do more for Italy to empower women? We have to start from schools, and what can your business do for that?
Yeah, I think obviously one of the we had three primary stakeholders that we needed to address as a result of the COVID here in Italy. One was our customers and keeping them connected. I noted earlier that we saw a huge increase in traffic, both in terms of smart working, learning from home, also entertainment in the evening as everyone was at home. The second was keeping our people safe. And so we have over 90% of our team that is now working from home, and we'll continue with that and closely monitor how COVID and the government's and the collective response to COVID evolves. And the final was really working with the Red Cross and other constituencies to help save lives by giving ventilators, monitors, beds, etc. to the hospitals, and keeping the patients that were affected connected with their family through free SIMs and tablets and devices. So I think through COVID specifically, that's what we've done. We're obviously specifically to women. One of the programs that we've put in place is Woman Hack, which effectively is bringing, given the lack of, or at least the imbalance, let me say, between men and women in engineering, and particularly in STEM, science, technology, and engineering and maths, that we have actually over 100 applications where we and a number of other companies as well, it wasn't just Wintray that was driving that agenda, invited women. We had at Wintray over 100 applications to come in and spend time with our women engineers. And again, back to what I discussed in the context of Take a Girl Child to Work, creating awareness, because I think, again, similarly at Wintray, some of my most talented team members are women. So how do we empower them? How do we enable them? How do we give them not just access to technology? I think that's less of an issue across most of Italy as compared to the developing countries. They're the white areas that we need to work on. But mobile communication covers most. But how do we give them the time and the space to be able to develop? And I think engineering is one of the areas that we've particularly focused on, because we saw the imbalance there. I mean, it's amazing with this whole smart working, with over 90% of our people working from home, our productivity has stayed the same, if not improved. And we have a lot of women in the company, and we know they have a number of things that they need to do at the same time. And so I don't want to have a huge, big, how do we empower women campaign here across Wintray. They're already very, very capable. Where I do think and where we are focusing is how can we balance more the women coming into the engineering space, because again, part of our legacy and certainly part of our future, if you think of 5G, is on making sure that we are modernizing the networks, modernizing the systems, and back to the skills point, really making sure that we have the skills that are capable of developing the apps, developing the code, attracting the money to be able to bring these applications to the market. And that's where I would push back at you a bit, Francesco. What are you doing in order, as a university, in order to empower women to get them ready for a lot more senior roles? Because we have a lot of imbalance across Italy there as well. And certainly when I see qualified women, they get promoted. But I also would urge the universities and others to help them grow in some of these areas, commercial areas, technology areas, because across the different longitudes and latitudes, some of my best resources, and sorry guys, have been women.
Yeah, this is I mean, I'm dean of the faculty at Bocconi, so one of my roles is exactly to make sure we promote women to the highest rank. For instance, full professor rank at Bocconi. We put some programs in place. For instance, there is a special program through which you can have a sabbatical and research funding that is special if you can basically argue that your trajectory has been hampered by family duties. It's not only for women, but historically there is 100% of our assignments of this fund, which we call career development, to women. Actually, we reacted also to COVID in a way, so we extended the tenure clock for assistant professors. So this is an initial step, knowing that this has been a challenging time for many of us, and we also gave a bit more childcare funding. So, yeah, Bocconi has to do a lot more but it takes a little bit of time to change organizations. I think we are doing our bit. We are also trying to do our bit through research. I think our time is over, and I apologize if I could not see the questions of participants. I know the three of us are on Twitter, so I encourage, this is a little ad, to follow Jeffrey, Reedy, and myself on Twitter, and maybe then you can challenge us and pose your questions in a public way. So if all participants follow us on Twitter, it will be a boost to our ego, but it will also be an opportunity to interact more on these topics also in the days that follow. And Reedy and I hope to also have a big boost next week with a media hype for our forthcoming paper, and you will see much of that. So thank you very much, Reedy from Oxford. Thank you very much, Jeffrey from Milan. And I thank all the participants for being here. This is SDA Bocconi Inside, and stay safe.
Thank you, Francesco.
Bye.
And I'll make sure to send a woman engineer over to help you with your question. Yeah.
Thanks very much, Francesco and Jeffrey. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Ciao tutti.